everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi on this Friday night, just a few minutes after 7 o'clock Eastern Time on March 23rd, 2018. I had to take yesterday off. I was so mentally fried from the night before that, and having had to spend 2 nights in a hotel because of where I work and having to cover the weather that was going on around here. So we wound up with every bit of a foot in most places, even areas in and around New York City got between 8 and 12 inches. But it was Long Island that took the biggest hit with respect to snow. I had 18 inches at where I am in central Long Island, and much of the area I am in central Suffolk County, what I call the snow belt of Long Island, wound up with anywhere from 15 to as much as 20 inches. We had snow falling at rates of 5 inches an hour for a couple of hours. MacArthur Airport was was right in the middle of that, and they did report 5 inches of snow in an hour's time, which is at a phenomenal rate. If you've never seen snow that heavy, it's literally the visibility is zero. It's like you're inside a snow globe. And I've experienced that a few times over the years. My monthly snow total for March is at 10, 17, 18, at 35 inches. And in my 31 years where I've lived, this is the most snow that I can remember during the month of March. The snow in the last 3 weeks is more than what we get in the average in a total winter is at 32, and for the season I'm at 70.4, which is the 5th highest snowfall that I've seen in the last 30 years, and it actually is in the top 5 with regards to, if I kind of interpolate the records going back to Brookhaven's records going back to 1947, it's right in there around number 5, number 6. So it was indeed quite a storm. New York City, Central Park, reporting 8 inches. And by the way, if the New York City office, excuse me, sent out today, they ran some numbers, and if you measure, the decades, starting with the year ending in 0 and finishing it with the year ending in 9, the decade of 2010 to so far, which is 2018, is the second snowiest decade on record, and it will be the snowiest decade on record for New York City, whose records go back to 1869. It will be the snowiest decade on record if we get another 12 inches, if by some reason we wind up with another event between now and mid-April, which is, I suppose, not impossible, and all of next winter. So if we get all of 12 inches in either now, what's left of this snow season, or next winter, we're going to have the snowiest decade on record. Just an absolutely amazing stat, really. And considering that when you look at that in terms of temperatures, the temperatures aren't anything remarkable. Probably, if you take the cold, the cold years and the warmer years, I have to work the numbers out. It probably winds up being a little bit above average. Okay, so let's go to what's going on right now, because we do have some weather. We certainly have weather to talk about. We have a storm in the west. We have a storm in the plains that's coming into the Midwest, and we also have a storm that is just east of the English Channel and France. That's bringing gales to Ireland and parts of, I believe, even into southern England. We'll look at the maps in just a second. But this is what we have going on tonight, with a smattering of winter weather advisories. It's a very narrow band of winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings that are up from North Dakota, and then extending through southwestern Minnesota, northeastern Iowa, north central Illinois, but it just kind of misses Chicago, just south of Chicago. This area of precip's going to wind up being south of Chicago, north of St. Louis, and then the band gets narrower and narrower. It actually moves right over Indianapolis and the winter weather advisories there. It gets narrower and narrower as we move into northeastern Kentucky, extreme southwestern Ohio, a small portion of southern West Virginia, and into the western mountains of Virginia and North Carolina. This is a weakening low that's coming out of Nebraska, South Dakota, that's moving southeastward and is going to become a major gale center once it gets out in the Atlantic, but it is not going to be a factor in the weather in the Northeast. It is not, or the Mid-Atlantic. It is not going to be nor'easter number 5. In the West, we have winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings up for northeastern California, in the mountains and on up into southeastern Oregon. And the advisories extend a little bit further north from there. Also a few advisories as you move southward into northern California. So this storm has already made its way inland, and it's already producing some rain and snow there. And they had that heavy rain yesterday with the major storm that moved inland, and now that has translated itself out into the plains. We'll pull up the radar tonight, and you can see the precip we're talking about here, what's coming into the northwest and northern California and into the Pacific Northwest. And we've got the snow. You see how the radar echoes across Nebraska have that kind of an arc to them. So there's the low center is just to the south of that arc, and then you have this area of snow across the Dakotas running down through Minnesota, and precipitation of snow and rain that's extending its way southeastward, east of St. Louis and into Indiana. Right now, the cold air hasn't gotten too involved, but eventually this is all going to be changing over to snow overnight and on Saturday. I kind of think that much of what falls out of this during the daytime Saturday in areas to the east is going to have a real tough time sticking to paved surfaces. Maybe in elevated areas, yes, but in paved surfaces during the day, that's going to certainly keep accumulations down considerably. So I'm not overly bullish by this. If this were a nighttime event, it might be a different story, but certainly the radar is busy enough, and I'll bring up the surface map to show you what's happening here. We have in the east, of course, the old storm is out near Newfoundland, and we have several upper air disturbances that are swinging through here in the northeast, and you can see the enhanced cloud cover there up in New England. That is actually backing southwestward. We've been getting these disturbances kind of rotating around the whole upper air complex that is sitting across New England and on eastward. So we'll see a couple of those disturbances. We actually have one moving through right now that's producing a few rain and snow showers in some places, and there'll be a second one coming tomorrow night into Sunday morning, and that could produce some snow showers. There's high pressure in eastern Canada that's just sort of sitting there, so there's cold air that's funneling down. Nothing especially cold, but certainly air that's cold enough that we could see some snow showers out of this. But you know, all that snow that fell, I have to tell you, where I am in southern Westchester County, I was basically sitting in a snow hole here again, so we only got maybe about 6 or 7 inches here, and it's all gone. And in many areas north and west of New York City, because the cutoff was very sharp, that snow has already gone. And even where I live, the snow was reduced yesterday, and I'm sure it was further reduced today. This stuff just disappears very, very fast. Temperatures just want to climb up into at least the 40s, which they did today. The strong March sun just eats the snow away, and this stuff's going to be gone relatively quickly. Certainly the colder air this weekend is going to keep it around for a bit, but once we get into next week and we start seeing our temperatures rise here in the east, it's all going to disappear. You can see the system that's sitting in the middle part of the country with the clouds, the enhanced cloud cover that's streaming northward. It's not looped, but you get the idea. The cloud cover that runs from the middle Mississippi Valley north and west up into the Dakotas, and then of course the complex series of systems that continues to roll along into the Pacific Northwest. There's actually a fairly impressive storm from the standpoint of the satellite signature sitting off the coast of northwest of Washington State, out in the Pacific Ocean that's, just spinning away. Storminess is going to be taking over in the western states going forward with the upper air pattern the way it is, and that is going to make for a rather uneventful week ahead here where I am. But let's go right to the models. We'll bring up the GFS, and there we go. I got to tell you, folks, I don't bounce back as well from these long duration events when I have to work them the way I used to. It's getting tiring. Okay, so here's our map for tonight at 8 o'clock, and there's the system low pressure in northern Kansas with the rain that is into Illinois and Missouri, snow back up through the Dakotas. The system coming into the west, you can see the model showing rain and snow there. And in the east, we've got these patchy areas indicative of this upper air disturbance, the first of a couple that's swinging on through. Now, watch the low as it moves eastward across Missouri. It's going to just basically fall apart. When we get into Saturday evening, the low has weakened considerably, and there's a shrinking area of precipitation with this snow on the northern fringe. That moves into western Virginia and western North Carolina. There's some snow and sleet being indicated there, but the low gradually weakens as it moves eastward. Big high up to the north there, 1044 millibar plus high over Quebec, and that's keeping a northeast flow into New England and the northeast and mid-Atlantic states, the northern areas of the mid-Atlantic states through Sunday, and that low moves out. It'll become a gale center to the east. Now, the western system moves into Kansas on Monday, and that's going to head up toward the Great Lakes. The high is eventually going to settle to the south, and that is going to warm things up. Not so much on Tuesday. The flow is still a bit onshore-ish, as I would like to call it, but then we'll warm it up a bit Wednesday into Thursday. I think we should probably get at least into the 50s on Wednesday, and a cold front will be moving on through. Another system coming into the northern Rockies at this point. Now the front's weak, so we'll just get pretty much nothing much more than a wind shift, and then a wave is forecast to develop on the front and bring some rain here Thursday night into Friday before that moves out, and then we go into the Easter weekend. I tend to think that perhaps it may wind up being a bit of a colder pattern here as we move toward the Easter weekend and beyond with what's going on in the upper air. Either that, or it may just evolve a bit differently than what the models are indicating. In my view, we've got what looks like a colder start to the month of April, and an evolving upper air pattern in the longer term. I want to switch over to the upper air now so you can see what's happening here in the east. And we'll back up. I'll actually go back 3 days, so we'll watch what happened with the system that we just went through. There's that really vigorous upper low that wound up moving off the Virginia coast a little bit further south than what was being modeled. Not a huge surprise here. Areas to the north, in southern New England, the cutoff of the snow was basically just north and east of New York City, so you didn't have to go very far to find amounts that were rather minimal. So Boston really didn't get too much out of this. Then the low moved out to the northeast, and of course right now you can see the disturbances that are coming along here. One that moved through this evening, and then we have another one that drops down on Saturday night. That's going to make a cutoff off the coast southeast of Cape Cod, and I'm going to switch to I'll switch to the North Atlantic view so we can take a look at how this looks out from the east. And there's that trough that swings out on Sunday, and it just cuts off there northeast of Bermuda, south of Halifax, and then actually rotates back westward as we move into the first couple of days of next week. So that's going to be sitting out there for a while. As a result of that deep cutoff in that position, a ridge pops up along the east coast, and that will cause temperatures at least to get back towards seasonal, which is now low 50s. We should at least get into the 50s here, I think, Wednesday, and maybe somebody could make a run for 60 on Thursday. You don't need a whole lot of effort this time of year to get to 60. And then eventually we're going to see this next trough swing through here for next Friday. And you can see there's a lot of troughing out to the west. There's a vortex that forms up in Hudson Bay in the longer term. The ridge is trying to hold on this runoff in the southeast, and that would at least suggest a warmer flow. But this could also be one of these deals where you get, cold air that comes in, what we usually call backdoor fronts, and that oftentimes in the spring can mean for miserable raw conditions under certain circumstances. I'm not ready to accept the idea on this run that we're going to have a ridge in the east like this. There's too many working pieces that are happening in the upper pattern. I want to jump over to Europe because there's activity going on there, so we'll take a look at that. And with the upper air going back a couple of days ago, now has broken down that big ridge, so we've got this wrapped up storm that you see here south of Ireland, east of the northwest coast of France, and it's forecast to drop southeastward into Spain and gradually weaken. But there is a bit of a colder flow that the models were indicating for late next week and for Easter weekend, and you can kind of see it here to some extent with this next upper low that drops southeastward towards Spain as we move into next Friday, and then just kind of rotates around. Some of the models were actually showing snow over England and parts of Ireland and Scotland for Easter weekend, which would be very interesting. You folks in the UK have had as much a remarkable month of March as we've had here in the eastern part of the United States. So let's see what it breaks down in terms of precip. Here's that gale center that's sitting east of the north coast of France, south of Ireland, and you're getting big rains. I don't know if it's big rains, but you're certainly getting rain up through England and Ireland and into northwestern France. That low drops down. Weather calms down a bit over the weekend, and then another Atlantic storm goes northwest of Scotland. A little snow up there for Monday into Tuesday, and there's some colder air here, so you get some snow showers being indicated. I want to see if they're still doing this idea for Easter weekend on this GFS run. And there's a low that's moving northward now toward the English Channel on Saturday. And yeah, to some degree, a little bit less on this run, but you can see there is some colder air. It actually comes in on the day after Easter with some snow showers. So it'll be interesting to see if it plays out according to plan on the models. I want to go back to southeastern Canada now because I did see, I don't know if I put, nope, did not pick the right geography. There it is. So let's go to southeastern Canada and we'll see how, I'll shrink this picture up a bit so that it fits the screen a bit better. And you can see from the dates, excuse me. So we're at this evening, 8 o'clock on the GFS. Some snow showers dropping southward as we go through the weekend over Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, then a bit of a break. There's the northern fringe of that gale center showing some precipitation offshore by the time we get to Wednesday, but it's too far south for you folks to get anything. And then the next weather system goes by to your west, maybe some showers, some rain and showers Friday into Saturday, maybe changing over to snow before ending. And then there's a little system there for Easter Sunday, if that's correct, with regards to weather 9 days from now. The upper air on this run, I think we'll jump to the European model. And here's the Europeans model structure here for day 10. And while it does make this vortex, it does try to develop a vortex over Hudson Bay. You notice the orientation here is northeast southwest. We actually have, and I'll back it up a little bit and go forward. It looks like there's a ridge that's building over the Aleutians and into the Bering Sea into a blocking high that finds its way up into the polar regions. You do have some blocking here, but everything's kind of oriented where you've got a northeast-southwest trough that runs from northeastern Canada into the western U.S., so the model seems to be creating a bit of a southwest flow here through the first few days of April. Now, whether it winds up staying that way or not remains to be seen. I'm sorry, I have the GFS up here. I must have accidentally switched over. Let me go back to the European and see how the European handles this. Okay, now we got the European. So the European's probably has a bit of a different view in its longer term. It has a bit more of high pressure across the poles. It's kind of more of an east-west oriented jet across the United States rather than this long stretched out trough from northeast to southwest. So I have my doubts right now on how things are going to happen going forward with regards to the overall pattern. If I can find it, because I haven't pulled them up in a while. These teleconnections are hiding here somewhere. Here we go. I do have the teleconnections going in for the longer term, and you'll notice that the PNA, the Pacific North America Index, stays rather strongly negative, kind of takes a jump up toward neutral along about the 27th of March, which is early next week, then comes back down negative and kind of stays that way. This is the storm that we just had is like the January storm, in that we had a negative PNA, but it was so strongly negative that and that combined with the NAO, which was negative and climbing, now sitting at a very strong, relatively strong positive reading. But that is forecast to weaken and go negative. And all through this, by the way, the EPO, the East Pacific Oscillation Index, forecast to go strongly negative. So, the NAO negative and the EPO negative, to me, signal that the East should be colder as we move into the month of April and not necessarily warmer. Maybe that PNA being negative is a bit of a wild card here, because that would point to troughing in the west and some ridging in the eastern part of the United States. So that could be a bit of a wild card. We'll have to see, which one of these indices has the stronger hand through all of this. More interesting times ahead for sure. So let me come back up to you guys on the board here. By the way, I'm thinking snowfalls in the area in the Midwest, in the areas from north central Illinois down through the narrowing band and through east central and southern Indiana, and in through northeastern Kentucky, southwestern Ohio, should be on the order of 2 to 4 inches, maybe a little bit more in some spots. But again, the biggest question is spots where it snows overnight versus spots where it snows during the daytime tomorrow. I just don't know how much of that is going to be able to accumulate during the daytime hours with the sun angle the way it is. And then, of course, by the time it gets to the Carolinas and Virginia, that storm system is going to continuously weaken. So let me just say hi to everybody. Nice crowd for a Friday night with no storm pending, and that's always good to see. Kevin Francis had the opportunity to see Mount Washington from the air a few times this week. Quite impressive with the amount of snow that has fallen recently, so we're ready for mud season. All of this snow, Kevin, is going to be melting and loading up the rivers. We have, by the way, going into the spring now, the reservoirs here are at just about full capacity, and the one thing I really don't want to see is a heavy rainstorm, because there will be a lot of flooding if that is the case. And James Vitale, say hi back to your dad. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cullen. I tried. I was weak on the northern and eastern side. The snowfall from the storm the other day, it did cut off in southern New England, and I was maybe a little bit too. I think I was a little bit too aggressive on that from that respect. You saw how difficult this whole forecast was, and look at the outcome, because the models going into the very, very short term, when we were inside 48 hours, it was moving around the area of max precipitation. It actually took it out of southern and central New Jersey, when in fact that's where it wound up happening. And the observations in the radars that were showing up during the day on Wednesday, it's all starting to kind of jumble into one long week. The observations, the radar showed this band of snow sitting just off the coast of Long Island, and another band that was sitting in Long Island Sound, and those areas that were on either side of that weren't getting very much. And also what happened was, in the morning on Wednesday, you had a heavy snow band set up right over New York City. So the urban areas actually it was snowing hard enough where the urban areas accumulated during the daytime, which didn't happen in the other two storms. And then suddenly at night, because of where the low moved offshore, the surface low that developed off the Delaware coast hung back and rotated around for a number of hours. You wound up with these heavy snow bands that just came northwestward and moved in over Long Island and New York City and eastern New Jersey down the coast, and those areas all got pounded. You're never going to be able to nail it exactly. And that is that is the most frustrating thing with snow forecasts. You're going to, as I've said many times before, you're always going to bust for somebody somewhere. Franklin Taylor, I envy you with those 68 to 70 degree daily high temperatures. Windy, hoping for some good much needed rains here in northern Arkansas next week. Well, you might get some with that next system when it comes out and heads over into the Great Lakes. Probably be able to generate some thunderstorms out of that. We'll keep an eye on it over the weekend. Greenfire 919, how does the long range into mid-April look? Well, a number of the longer range models, particularly the European long range, going out 45 days, is pretty cold, showing a rather chilly, for April anyway. It's got rather a cold look to it for much of the month. We'll want to see how the upper air pattern evolves in the next couple of weeks with regards to that. Frank Bryan, are you positive that the next storm is going to be way south of us? I've heard it before the last four storms. I don't know who you heard it from before the last four storms, Brian, but if when I'm assuming that you live up you're in my general area. If you're talking about the system that's going off the southeast coast of the United States, the one that's coming out of the plains now, yes, that is not coming up here. Okay, it's amazing and funny how after a couple of storms, how easy rumors start. I don't know. I shake my head. I wonder sometimes where these people get this stuff from. Frankie McDonald, I took care of you in the Canadian Maritimes, so I hope you were paying attention. Okay. Timothy Veltman, yep, quite a storm. Not a flake for you guys, but you got plenty up over the winter. My. You can't have every single one of them. This is, by the way, the second storm this winter that produced over a foot of snow for me, which, in the long term, averages, maybe you get a 1 foot plus snowstorm around here every 2.5 years. And this is another year where we've had two in 1 year. It's just astounding what's happened in the last 18 winters here over in my neck of the woods around Long Island and just east of New York City. Let me just move a little bit forward here, just checking on all of your comments. Timothy Veltman, red is how you're okay. Somebody must have asked about higher than average pressure is in the red areas. Higher and warmer in red, bluer and colder, lower and colder in the blue in general, and that's when we look at the upper air. And yeah, you had a lot of sleet in Bridgeport there, Shelly, man, and you never really got into that band. It was sitting just to your south for hours, and it never made it up. It's only a handful of miles from the North Shore of Long Island to the South Shore of Connecticut. Some of it did get into Stamford and into southwestern Connecticut, but it never really pushed all the way up to New Haven and to Bridgeport. From there east, it was very much a disappointment for you snow lovers. Okay, where is the top 5 snow alleys? Carrie Suggs. I'm not sure what you mean by snow alley. If you can clarify that, I'll try and answer the question. Oh, good. Frankie McDonald was listening. I'm happy. You know, I lately, with all the action that's been going on around here, I haven't been able to pay too much attention to you guys, and for that I apologize. The January 4th storm was the best, and after in Bridgeport, and after that, it's been disappointing. Yeah, I can understand that. This winter has been, you know, this winter has been remarkable in so many different ways, and also very much a learning experience. I guess you're thinking snow belts. You have the snow belts, by the way. You have snow belts in upstate New York near the Great Lakes. The lake shores of northwestern Pennsylvania and Ohio. You've got snow belts in what would be considered snow belts in and around Lake Huron and Lake Superior. There's one that comes off Lake Michigan on the east side, on the Michigan side. All of those are very, very active, what we would call snow belts, because from those areas, it's a matter of the wind direction more than anything else. When they're coming across the lakes over the water, and it picks up moisture, and you wind up with these, you know, snow squalls that come in, and they can produce incredible amounts of snow over relatively small distances, relatively short geographic distances in square miles, and you can see some phenomenal amounts. Some of the places in upstate New York, you get snow that's measured in feet on a regular basis when the lake effect snow machine is running at full blast. All right, folks, let's call it a night. It's a Friday night, time for a weekend of rest, but I'll be on this weekend at some point. I'm not sure about tomorrow in terms of a time, because I've got a few things I got to take care of, but we will we'll get a live video on at some point, and on Sunday as well. Brandon Doherty, thank you for being here. You want to add to my cigar collection? You certainly go right ahead, by all means. You can hit the PayPal on my website, or Super Chat, or however you want. It's perfectly fine, and I appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. And I'm glad you say this has been a great learning experience for you, and I really thank you. I'm glad that is the case. Do I think the GFS or the NAM for this storm in Ohio? You want the NAM, William F., because that has more snow than anything else. Either way, you're dealing with a shrinking area of snow that's going to be occurring more in the daytime than anything else. I don't know how much you're going to get out of this. Maybe you'll be pleasantly surprised if you get some heavier bands to hold on. And that's the other thing. The system is going to be weakening as it comes eastward. So you've got that working against you. You'll have to hope that the system holds on long enough to produce a decent amount of precip for you, and that you maintain the intensity in order for snows to accumulate. All right, folks, that's it for tonight. Everybody have a great Friday night. Stay safe. Have a great weekend. We'll see you over the weekend. And who knows? With the weather as crazy as it's been, we're taking a break from nor'easters here in the northern Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, but spring can oftentimes surprise with a couple of nor'easters, and who knows? We may have one more chance yet for one more late season snowfall. Would not shock me in the least. Have a great weekend, everybody.